Hello, everybody out there. This is Shawn coming to you from San Antonio. We have our folks from Foundations coming to you live from Philadelphia, I think, right, Elizabeth?
New Jersey, but outside of
New
Philadelphia.
Jersey. Sorry, I get you guys where you're located. I get a little confused. Sorry about that. And then we have Jacquelyn coming to us
No
all the way
problem.
from Connecticut.
Hello, everyone.
Hey. So Elizabeth, I'm gonna turn the time over to you to get us
Hi.
started.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Siri. I'm the Director of Teaching and Learning at Foundations, Inc., and I just want to thank you all for joining us for another virtual edition of our Perspectives from the Field talk show. I just want to say a special thank you before we start to the Charles Stewart Mott Foundation for sponsoring us today. We have a lot to talk about, so I'm going to turn it over to our host, White-Riley-Peterson Fellow Shawn Petty, and our special guest, Jacquelyn Santiago, Chief Operating Officer of Compass Youth Collaborative. Welcome, Shawn. Welcome, Jacquelyn. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I am so excited to be here, Shawn. Can everyone hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Perfect.
We lost Shawn, but
okay. We can keep going or we can wait. I'm not sure. How would you like us to proceed, Elizabeth?
so go ahead. I know you have some slides that you have prepared for us.
Absolutely. So thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to be here. Shawn has been such a wonderful host, and I love watching these webinars. They're fun, engaging, dynamic, and share so much with the community that otherwise I wouldn't know. So I thank you for the opportunity to be here. So I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about our work at Compass Youth Collaborative. We are in Hartford, Connecticut, and we run school programs as well as our program for our Compass Peace Builders, which both of them work with youth affected by trauma, one in a school setting and the other one in a community setting. But essentially, we are all about youth. I love working at Compass and have been at Compass for about 18 years now. And I have enjoyed my journey here tremendously. I am proud to say that in January I will be moving on to be the CEO of this wonderful agency, and have had great experiences from an amazing leader, our current CEO. And so I'm very fortunate to be able to continue with this mission. I have worked in program design, in after-school settings. I have also worked in violence prevention for over 10 years, and I'm a community organizer at heart, so community means so much to me. And welcome back, Shawn. Quite all right. Welcome. Yes, I'm very excited. I'm very excited for the opportunity. It does give us an opportunity to, grow the agency, but we'll still remain the same. Our mission still remains the same. It's still all about helping the youth. And so, our mission is basically to raise the expectations, inspire lives, and build peace in the community through the work that we do in schools and through our Peace Builders work. We help youth develop the skills and assets needed to reach their fullest potential in school and beyond. As I mentioned, we do have programs that work within the streets, and we promote safety, wellness, academic success of youth, inspiring and empowering them to pursue and contribute to their own greater future. And we do that through school-based programs, as well as our Peace Builders program, which is a youth violence mitigation and re-engagement program. Compass essentially believes in meeting the needs of the whole child. When it comes to the school-based work that we do, it means that the students must have their basic needs met, right? They must be safe, free of crisis, free of trauma, in order for them to function well. A kid who is hungry is not going to be able to focus on math. A youth who is in trauma is only going to focus on surviving. So Compass has been a critical partner within the school. During the school day, we coordinate services for the school. After doing a needs assessment, we determine whether they need mental health clinicians, or they need a food pantry or a clothing bank. Whatever it is that they might need, we are providing resource coordination efforts and partnering with other community members in order to make that resource happen at that school. It's all so that kids could have all of their barriers to learning removed. Yeah. Absolutely, and we recognize that, in schools it can be a daunting task, right? Teachers have to teach all this content, and they have to teach it within a certain period of time to sometimes large numbers of students in their classroom, all while dealing with all of these other factors that might come into play. Poverty is a big one, but also, trauma, incidents, risk factors that happen. Basic needs are not being met, and it really does take a community to work together to address all of those needs, and we are that critical partner in the schools that we partner in. So not only do we do this resource coordination, but we're also finding ways to extend the learning through after-school programming, and we provide programs at 3 Hartford schools. Essentially, there's an academic hour, an enrichment hour, and then there's a disguised learning opportunity. I call it disguised learning, or we do as an agency, because it's the opportunity for kids to learn without knowing that they're learning. So they might think they're going to a cooking class because in middle school and high school they're always hungry, right? But we are actually teaching them other things. There's reading in there, there's following instructions, there's math, there's etiquette. There's so many different things that can be embedded within a lesson while still having fun in hands-on learning activities. And so we all, go ahead. Yeah. Sometimes they do. We actually, a big part of what we do, and you'll hear about this again later, but we ask the kids what they want to do. So sometimes they think that it's a setup. So they'll say, I'll say, what do you want to do in after school? Anything, miss? Well, what about fantasy football? And I said, sure, we could do that. And immediately their response is like, whoa, we just got over. Little do they know that they have to have math in there, statistics and all of that stuff. And then they're like, I didn't know this was going to be math. And I said, but it can be fun, and so we find ways to make it engaging and fun with them. So yeah, it's great fun for everyone. So it's all about relationships, whether it's about the kids or the teachers or the principals at the school. It's really about explaining to them through the relationships that this is actual learning in a different way. But we also do have a strategy behind that. We employ education coordinators who are teachers that work within the school, and their job is to kind of give us information about what they're learning during the school day, how we might make it a fun, engaging after-school activity, and align those pieces in the after-school as well. So sometimes there are direct linkages to what they're learning within the school day, which makes it a lot more palatable for the school.
Wow, so you feed every...
So yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So it's all great fun, and we also do provide recreation after school, because the kids need to be healthy as well, learn team dynamics, and all of our students do receive dinner before going home every evening. So that's really key. We don't know whether these kids will have the opportunity to have dinner, and that's our way of helping with that situation as well. Then we have our Peace Builders program. All of our... No, go right ahead. All of our students in our after-school program that stay after school are fed dinner. Yes, and this is through a federal program.
Wow, that's really cool. Well,
so this is a collaboration with the school, and it's through the federal program.
I'll stop interrupting and let you continue. But wow, that's
and so basically, it's federal funding that comes down through the state that we were able to access through partnership with the school district and our program. So all of our programs have it. It's not every program has tapped into this resource as of yet, but it's so valuable to our program. Yes. Absolutely. I would love to share more information about how you could make that happen. I also wanted to share about our Peace Builders program. They target 11 to 18-year-old youth who are perpetrators or victims of violence. The Peace Builders themselves are staff that have walked in the same path as those youth in their former lives, and now they, or may have been also convicted of a crime in the past. And now they have turned their lives around and committed themselves to the betterment of youth in the Hartford community. They truly can attract youth because they are living testimonies that if things go wrong, there's trauma, there's different issues that happen in your life, but you can actually get your life together and change things for the better. And so they're living testimonies of that positive change, and they draw kids so much, more so than I would ever, because I think they see themselves in the staff that are out there. They're also community members, so it's easy to make that connection with them. And our Compass Peace Builders provide everything from case management support, mentorship, but they're also intervening in cases of crisis,
and you've had tremendous
fights,
success with
a violent situation
program,
that may end up in the hospital.
I remember reading in your
things like
news,
that, but also
a couple
life
of
skills classes. They're providing
those.
They're providing.
They go on to do some amazing things.
Mental health supports as well.
Is that just a one-time thing, or is that pretty reoccurring throughout the whole program?
Because we have a social worker on staff that works with these kids. We do provide cognitive behavioral therapy sessions and group sessions, but they also have access to one-on-one opportunities. It's been reoccurring. I mean, that program itself is 10 years old, and we do have youth that have participated, like those firefighters have participated in our regular Compass program, and then we have our Peace Builders program. Just this recently, our whole team was in tears because there was a student that we had been working with for over 4 years, and was at
It's
the highest
absolutely amazing.
level of risk, and we were able to get them
I
to
put in the chat room
a
just
school,
if
an
anyone
independent
wants to
school,
learn more
Penn
about the program, or
Foster,
check
and
out
then
the website
also
and take a look at it.
graduate.
It really
And now
is
they're going to
the
take
program that
community
you've built there.
college
The Peace Builders program
courses.
is truly
And
a
it's
model for the nation.
opportunities like that, or the
And,
kids that join the
I know
military,
you have
or
a
kids that
philosophy
want to
behind,
give back
how to
and
help kids, and I
participate
think
in
that's
our
kind of
program,
where you're going to
are
share
all
next,
success
right?
stories that we can attribute to the Compass Peace Builders program. Absolutely. Well, we believe in the whole child, as I mentioned before. A child who is not healthy, is having crisis traumas in their life, really can't focus on anything but survival. And in this next slide, you see the ACE and maladaptive coping. Because, as it says on the slide, childhood experiences, both positive and negative, have a tremendous impact on future violence, victimization, and perpetration, and lifelong health and opportunity. There are so many things that basically it's just important to note that our kids are amazing and they have so much potential to do great things in this world, but they need the right resources. They need the right people at the right time to help them flourish. Life may not have come to them with a perfect start, or even a fair start for that matter, but youth face many different challenges that are beyond their control, and these life experiences do not have to be forever. You know, we can help shape the way they respond to situations in the future. With this ACE test is basically a test that was designed to measure trauma.
I'm sorry for interrupting.
Due to neglect, abuse, household dysfunction, and there are 10 types that are measured by this test. The higher the level of the trauma experienced in childhood, the greater the chances are for mental, social, and physical health challenges in the future.
A healthy person as far as
they're at greater risk for chronic disease, and can even result in early death, as you see in that pyramid there. It manifests itself. Go ahead. Absolutely, because remember your brain is already on survival mode. You know, it's been shaped by the experiences that they've had, and if they've been traumatic experiences, things that have left seared a path in their brain, basically they're not going to be able to make the best decisions, or they're only making decisions based on survival. And so when they make these decisions, it could be their health, what they're eating. It could mean that, you know, they're depressed, that they're not able to go out into the community and interact or communicate what their feelings are, what they've learned, or, you know, what they've experienced. And over time, we'll discuss this, but over time it does impact the way that your brain develops. And so when you are facing those kinds of things and you're making unhealthy choices, you're taking unnecessary risks, this could lead to early death. Violence and, you know, really is a public health issue, and I don't think people understand that. But when you think about chronic stress even, or trauma, and the effects that it has on your body, mind, and spirit, it really does have a lasting impact and can really change your life. So thank you for that question, because I think it's really important to really make that connection that, you know, this is not, and I want to underscore again, this is not the end all be all. You know, I actually took the test myself and scored an 8. Anything above 4 is considered to be high risk factors. But there are things, like as I mentioned before, you can't control from your childhood.
It's interesting. You said
I can't control that. I had family issues with substance abuse, or the fact that there were instances of neglect and those kinds of things. They shaped my experiences. But thankfully, I had people in my life to create other experiences and provide other opportunities that allowed me to overcome that.
Is that kind of
and that's why I think
what helped you along, or was it grit or gumption?
I can tell you, I can pinpoint the exact time it happened for me. I actually was born into poverty. My dad has a 5th grade education. My mom barely made it through high school. I was making bad choices, hanging out with wrong people, doing those things, but I had one thing working in my favor. I was a good student. I love to learn. And in 5th grade, I was offered an opportunity to go to a college, at that time it was middle school, actually. I received a scholarship and was able to go 15 minutes in a world away to another school that where I turned into an F student, because I realized quickly that my education wasn't as good in the neighboring town, and was failing and struggling for a while. It was those experiences that allowed me to see that there was something beyond what I was seeing in my backyard. But it was also access to a rigorous education with the supports of teachers. I literally went to these teachers' homes on weekends and evenings, and people were trying everything they could to make sure that I was successful. They wanted to know what I was about, and that was the turning point in my life. So, my mom is the most amazing person ever. I have both parents in my life. My dad has actually struggled still to this day with alcohol and drug abuse. However, my mom has always been a strong backbone and has always pushed me. In fact, when I wanted to quit that private school, she kept saying, "You've got this. You can do this.
So,
you're walking the same shoes that they are, and you can make this happen. Don't worry about all your challenges." So she's been key to me. And for those that don't have that parent figure or a strong figure, it's important to connect them to at least one caring adult to make sure that they know how to support them, explore what these kids are about, because it makes all the difference in the end. Yes, there's physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. There's community violence, which I know people are interested in. Abandonment and neglect, domestic violence, prostitution and sex trafficking, serious accidents, even medical trauma, injury, or illness could be something. Natural disasters, all of those things are examples of events that can traumatize a youth. And if not addressed or given the opportunity to communicate those issues, could lead to serious behavioral issues as they try to cope with these traumatic issues. And I wanted to also bring to your attention that this community violence piece is actually not assessed through the ACE study.
These aren't
and things like witnessing a shooting, a bombing, or a riot, being shot at, being jumped, as we call it here, or beaten, being stabbed, or having lost someone close to you to murder is not a part of that ACE study. So it is very likely that students or youth that are in communities that face a lot of urban issues such as community violence could score much more than a 10. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, what we've
So
learned through
there's
our work
science
is
around
that,
this. Is that
there's
correct?
so much that goes into this, where, the kids are constantly fearing after a situation like this, fearing for their own lives, and they start trying to protect themselves, trying to figure out what measures do they need to take in order to make sure this doesn't happen again. Or they're reliving this in their mind on a day-to-day basis, and they really need someone to speak to on these kinds of things and find better coping mechanisms. Absolutely. I've been fascinated with the brain science around this because when youth experience multiple traumas over a long period of time, it actually affects the way that their brain develops, and there are gaps in their development. The basically what, and I want to describe to you. I have this. I flipped over to this other body image because as I speak, I would like for people to see what actually happens in your body. But it's important to recognize that youth who are facing traumas are not only facing greater risk for chronic illness, but they also face significant cognitive challenges over time. And, when you think about, you need a foundation, and upon that foundation, you build your learning opportunities. Those experiences help build. So if they're only facing traumatic incidences, what they're building on is negative. They haven't had an opportunity to build new experiences and positive experiences and ways of doing this. And if we take you through what the body basically goes through, you basically have the hypothalamus. And it's a small, but it's an important part of the brain because it links the nervous system to the endocrine system. And it tells the endocrine system to secrete stress hormones whenever you face a challenge, right? It's either fight, flee, or freeze. I know everyone's had those experiences where you face a challenge or something that scares you. You might want to fight the situation. You might want to run. And there are those that just stay there and freeze. Well, your brain is receiving those messages, and the stress hormone like adrenaline and cortisol start flooding your system because they want to prepare you to respond to the threat or the danger. In addition, your heart rate starts to come up, your blood pressure starts to come up, and your breathing rate is, you're breathing very heavy. Blood rushes to the muscles to respond to that. But there are other things that shut down or actually stop because your body feels like those are not as necessary in the moment, and that's digestion and your immune system are switched off. Right? So here we go back to that ACE studies, right? If you have a kid who is constantly in this prolonged, stressful state, it does add to your physical, illness over time because your body can't sustain that over time. It's only meant to respond to a threat and be gone. Also, if you look at the hippocampus, is also an important part for your learning opportunity. So this is how it impacts your learning ability. This is the place where you store the memory of that danger. It is important to note that the individual is on high alert state, right? The body and the brain are working hard to take in all of this information, and without even consciousness or awareness, many sights, sounds, smells, tastes, all those physical sensations are being encoded into an experience. These experiences and perceptions, as well as the outcome of the response, will be used for future situations to prime the appraisal of danger. So sometimes we approach a child and we might have an idea of, I'm just making a simple reprimand of them. For them, it might trigger a response. It might trigger a situation and experience that they've had that causes them to respond in a fight, flight, or freeze because that's the only experience that they've stored in their hippocampus. But more importantly than that, when it comes to learning over time, I mentioned that it does change the structure of your brain. Well, the hippocampus loses neurons, and the size of your brain is actually reduced. Okay? So that really blew my mind when I started studying this. And it impacts, because all of the chemicals are flooding your brain, and you're losing neurons, and in this process. So it impacts the long-term memory and your learning over time. It's incredible to me, and it almost brings me to tears when I think about this, because all of this time we're thinking, these kids just don't want to learn, or they just don't have the ability, right? But it's all of these traumas that are affecting them. Their bodies are so
high that
focused on responding to threat. Who's going to hurt me now? What's going to happen now? That they can't actually
it almost seems like there's no hope. Is there?
Put the energy or bring their system to respond to the learning that's being presented to them. There's always hope, Shawn. That's what we're here for. This is what we do. It gives me such pride to be able to do this work with Compass. I would do it regardless, just because I'm a living example that there's hope. With all of the risk factors that I faced, and according to that ACE study, if I were to live and die by that, you would pretty much think that there was no hope for me. But it was that intervention by adults, that focus on me, learning about me, putting the extra time to help me learn, that actually changed my life. I wouldn't be here today if it were not for those people who invested that time. And it comes at the most important time, development, right is so important. And for me at that time, it was extremely important because it's middle school. It's the time when your body's changing, you're going through all these hormonal changes. There's so much pressure to fit in with your peers, and I don't know about boys or girls very much. Boys so much, but I know girls, for me it was hard to manage my emotions. Yeah, so basically during this time you're also building skills that you'll need for your future, so that you can meet those long-term goals, so that you can do abstract thinking, and you're developing this sense of who am I, right? And all of this is happening at a time when, for some youth, where trauma has entered the picture, right? And there's been a lot of impact on these youth, and it's really difficult for youth to be able to focus on normal development when they're just on survival mode again. So the body development can be more distressing. Isolation and withdrawal, persistent distrust and suspicion of others, continued expectation of being mistreated, difficulty in perspective taking, and even trying to get people to help you is beyond what they can comprehend. Difficulty with establishing even appropriate boundaries is something that they struggle with when trauma is introduced into the normal development. And behaviorally, you have youth who experience difficulty in determining what's dangerous and what's not. And so most of the time you get the response that is their danger response. And they can't, because they can't determine between danger and safety. And they can't really make decisions for long-term goals.
That is such
and more importantly, and what we see a lot in our Compass Peace Builders program, is that they engage in risky behaviors.
We tend to focus a lot of times on the kids that act out behaviorally.
The opposite of it is that they could be avoidant of any risk, even healthy risk or healthy challenges. such as, going after that AP math course, or, going to that advanced geometry course because they don't want to take any risk. What if I'm not good, right? And emotionally, yes, absolutely. There are those kids that just can't bring themselves to say anything, and those are the ones that go below the radar many times. So that's why it's important for us to, as adults, to be vigilant and look for these signs of withdrawal, or excessive timidness, where they just won't try anything, or that they have the ability to do something and won't do it. Because most of the time it could be a normal behavioral thing where they're just afraid and need that little extra push, or they could be facing some trauma. So the emotional piece is also really important, because at this stage, especially in middle school, they have to start learning self-regulation, and focusing and describing their feelings can start as early as they're able to speak. And that's really important that they do that part, that communication piece, but that is also impacted by trauma. Then, communicating wishes and desires. That's something that we do with our kids all of the time. It's so important that they tell you what it is that would help them. Just moving quickly to the cognitive piece, because I think that's the most important for me, in that I feel, in my experience, if it wasn't for education, there wouldn't be Jacquelyn Santiago as there is today. And so I think it's really important for kids to really get a good education. And when they're traumatized, they have difficulty regulating their attention, so their focus is completely off. All of their executive functioning skills, including memory, are impaired.
Wow.
And they can't really bring up information, as I mentioned before, that is stored in their memory.
Younger, or it's this living this constant state?
Traumatized youth also have, just to give you some information, traumatized youth have IQs of 8 or more points lower than non-traumatized youth. Also, 70% of the juvenile justice youth have been diagnosed with a learning disability. It's a little bit of both, and I think when you have these experiences that shape you, essentially you are.
I see on the new slide
in a constant stress state, with those chemicals constantly flooding your system, and with your inability to really manage those chemicals and self-regulate, then you end up having riskier decisions, making riskier decisions in your life. Yeah. Yes, well, when they're facing trauma, and I'm going to use this based on our Compass Peace Builders model, when youth are shot or stabbed or even assaulted, they go through the normal pattern. You're treated in the ER department, you're admitted to inpatient surgical services, and you're discharged to the street. This is where a large part of our work begins, because they're out in the street and trying to figure things out, sometimes on their own if they don't have a Compass Peace Builders program, a mentor, someone they can go to. And they're dealing with all this acute stress and post-traumatic stress on their own, and the fear sets in, right? They might get a weapon if they're the fighters, or they might self-medicate if they're the freeze or flight people. And then you have instances of retaliation or re-injury. And so those never end up in anything good. It's jail or death. But they don't know any better. These are the coping mechanisms that they've been accustomed to. This is what their experience tells them. It's saying it's me or them. I have to survive. So This is what they have in their mind, but we have to change that. We at Compass Peace Builders, do everything that we can to make sure that there's a connection between the school and the community, that we're constantly having conversations about kids that they might be having difficulty with in the schools.
You actually
also, our Peace Builders work really unconventional hours. Sometimes while you and I may be sleeping, my Peace Builder team is out there.
Like
yeah,
said, 2 or 3
they're out there 2, 3 in the morning, and they are connecting with these kids when they're out there. And they're able to touch these kids on the weekends, nights, and interrupt instances where they might be making bad choices. We also... All the time. All the time. We get calls on a regular basis from youth, but our part of our regular schedule is that the Peace Builders are out in the community. Especially, we've targeted some Hartford police data that tells us that the kids are most active between Thursday and between Wednesday night and Saturday morning. And so we have groups on Wednesdays. We have community patrols on Thursdays through Saturdays, late into the evening hours. We're at parties. We're at parades. We're anywhere that the kids are.
Okay.
So we work with Hartford Police Department, and basically we're exchanging information all the time. We're saying this is what we hear, this is what we see. They're giving us data on when high crime times are, where what we call the hot spots might be, and those are high crime areas. And we make sure that we have a team of our community members, our Peace Builders, out there in uniform with their big Piece It Up logo on the back of their shirt. Easily identifiable, and they're out there making relationships with people every Wednesday through Saturday night. We're also a part of community things during the week. We're going to court visits, we're doing all those things, but essentially the key is to build those relationships. And so we're talking, getting information about what happens in the community, and then when an incident happens, if it's of a violent nature, we're intervening, but we're not strangers. We are, oh yeah, those are the Peace Builders. They're here to do well, so let's help them in any way we can. And we've developed such great relationships within the community that people tell us when they know there might be danger, and they've stopped
it's my job as a
engaging in
host
fights
those kind of
if we're around, because they recognize that this is support, this is help. They've come in peace.
For you, and that is,
so that's the kind of impact that we've had just by being out in the community. Sometimes it takes doing barbecues,
coming by,
being at parades, doing whatever we can, community cleanups, to show that this is our neighborhood and we care about it, and you should too.
Peace Builders, really have worked with the community and are now such a part of the community that kids don't do that. Kids don't give that secret code that, oh, hey, the Peace Builders are here, or any of that.
So I'm going to be 100% honest in saying that you always have, that small percentage of kids that don't want anything to do with the program. They're not ready for the program. They're not ready to interact with anyone. And unfortunately, in those cases, they are usually end up in the juvenile justice system. But for the most part, I would say that at least over 80% of our kids want to have somebody intervene, because what we've noticed is that a lot of times, especially the younger kids, get involved in something that they're not ready for, and so they're actually their outside is saying, yeah, let's fight, let's do this, we're gonna get into this, altercation, and you can't stop me, I'm gonna beat you, or whatever the case might be. But in reality, their insides are saying, someone please stop this. And so many times we've intervened in fights and with much success. And I think it's because,
awesome. It's good to hear,
the peace builders, for lack of a better term, they have that reputation that they've been there, done that, they understand what that life is about, and they've changed their lives. So they've gained a lot of respect in the community from the youth themselves. So I don't think there's a code for that much of a code. Yeah, I'll just give you a quick example. I think, we were at a parade one time where there was a violent incident triggered, and I don't recall at the time what it was, but they were determined, these kids were determined to retaliate for something that had happened. And when the peace builders showed up, it didn't completely stop. I'll have to say it was probably one of the more scarier situations. However, they were going around and trying to find ways around the staff, and they wouldn't hurt the staff because they respected them that much. It took about, it seems like an eternity when you're intervening in a situation like that, but it took about 15 minutes before we were able to get both sides to put weapons down. But it did happen successfully. But to me, when I debriefed that situation, I said they have enough of the respect that, the peace builders weren't actually a target at any point in time. But when you're... It seems like an eternity. And in that situation, because, again, the key is having the pre-established relationships. Because we were able to connect with people we had relationships with, we were able to de-escalate much quicker. And this is why we're such a powerful team when we have the Hartford Police Department working with a community agency like ours. So I also wanted to bring your attention to the fact that one of the unique things about this program too is that we do have hospital interventions. And so we not only do we have a social worker on staff to work with the incidences of trauma, but when there's a violent situation in the community, the hospital calls our peace builder staff to respond to the hospital. The reason why they're called to respond is because there is the piece of having to console youth and families for something such a tragic incident. Sometimes it's the loss of a family member or serious injury, but it's also to collect information and prevent retaliation in the community. The unfortunate thing about trauma is that people want to hurt people, if they've been hurt themselves. So it's really, we've been able to, through this partnership with the hospital, decrease the number of lockdowns. And lockdown is when they have to shut down the hospital to access to anyone due to a violent incident. So, and Jacquelyn, we've decreased those by 60% since our partnership.
Tori asked, where are some of the areas that you recruit your peace builder staff?
60%.
From?
So they value this partnership as much as we do. We're trained to go into the hospital and work with the families, work with the hospital staff in order to make sure that we can be the support they need us to be during times of crisis. Oh, that's a great question. We have the most unconventional recruitment strategy that you could possibly imagine, and even the interview is not anything like we do for our regular programming. We are looking for, and we don't post. That's the other piece. We don't post in a regular monsters.com. We're actually within the community. And through word of mouth, we kind of when we say that we're looking for someone, we'll get names of people who are within the community that could work with youth. Now, the screening process goes something like everything from looking at Facebook, frequenting the neighborhood where they're from to make sure that they've actually changed their lives around. We wait about 5 years since their last criminal activity in order for them to be hired with our program. And then we have a series of conversations with family members, with community members, all with their knowledge, because it's important for anyone joining our Peace Builders team to understand that this is a lifestyle. It's not just a job. Once you enter our team, it really is, you're a role model full time. There's no room for slip-ups or third chances in this case, because a slip could mean that you have just added to the trauma of a child, and we can't afford that. So we really go through and have these conversations with them and their family members to say, this is a lifestyle, this is what you're committing to, is to working with youth and to be the best role model that you can be. And we provide training, because there are no degrees most of the time for these people that come onto our team.
Amazing.
We are actually training them on everything from CPR, first aid, but psychological first aid. We're training them how to respond to a crisis. All of these things are critical to the work, but there's no prescription per se, other than a lot of vigilance, a lot of community conversations, so that we can get the right fit in our door.
I know you wanted to go through some developmental approaches and how people in the audience can take some of what you're doing and put it back into their program. So I'm going to be quiet and just let you go for it.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm just going to touch really quickly on a couple of things. In schools, we do provide, again, it's about those relationships. It's about putting the people in place to be present for kids when they need them most. It's important to screen youth for their needs and make sure that we understand exactly what it is what are their pain points, what do they need. And because kids are in school so often, I think it's important that we use the schools as a way as an opportunity to approach these kids and use the trauma-informed approach by making sure that you communicate with the kids and have them tell you what their needs may be. And it's a team effort, especially at a school where you have social workers, you have guidance counselors. It's important to get together and discuss each youth individually and discuss a plan for them moving forward. At our Peace Builders program, we do have, we tier them because the approach is important. It's important to their development. And so in Peace Builders, because youth have experienced certain levels of trauma and may have been exposed to things way beyond their years, we do tier them not only by age, but also by risk level. Tier 4 being the highest risk tier, and a Tier 1 is basically when they're ready to exit the program and they've gained leadership skills enough to be a part of our leadership program, our Junior Peace Builders model, and then they can be referred to other community resources. And this is all done through constant assessment of their needs. And at the school level, they're separated by grades. So it's important, these slides are just basically to say that it's important that youth are at the center of the work that's being done. Never create a plan that is based on solely our prescription, what we believe as adults, because we've seen this. The youth have a lot of wonderful ideas. They know what some of the issues are and can have some great input into their own treatment plans. So it's important to ask them what their goals are, what their aspirations are, what are their triggers. And we actually have our Junior Peace Builders model where, because they've learned how to do this and they've learned to advocate and they've learned to tell us what their issues are, that they help us plan our program. And they tell us the things that are no longer in style, no longer hip, no longer attract kids, and help us build a more positive program. So
Wow,
You know,
I just had to highlight that. That's amazing. Thank you.
It's okay. Yes, junior peace builders. And they are those kids that have decreased their level of their risk level from a 4 to a 1 and are able to help us spread the word. And they've actually helped us prevent violence in the community on many instances. Yeah. Well, thank you. You know, it speaks to the resilience of kids, you know, but they can't do this by themselves. They have to learn how to cope with the trauma. They have to learn different styles and different strategies. And it's our job to connect them to family structures, to positive peer structures, tell them that they can learn and grow and that they can be self-sufficient, and tell them that they matter and that we care about them and that they're wonderful kids, because I don't think half of the time they believe that. I have a wonderful story about a kid who basically said to me, I said, what was the difference? What made you go from F's and misbehaving to now being an A student? And she says, when someone believed in me, I could no longer take 0 for an answer. That always stood by me, you know, and it's impactful to me, and I think it's really important because kids do want to be successful and they do want to be recognized for positive things. It's important to also connect them to school, and spirituality can be a real gift for kids who really are looking for that other outlet and a belief in something greater than themselves. We also are, you know, when we talk about getting kids back on track, you know, it's important for them to develop new ways of thinking and relating and responding, and that's done through modeling. We can do that. We can teach them how to make better choices, even role playing, doing things like, okay, if you had to do that situation again, what would you do different? And they have to have that relationship with a trusted adult, peer that can help them look at things very differently. Again, that's more perspective taking and communication. Traumatized youth can learn new ways to handle it, and it can be difficult when emotions are involved. So we have to also teach them how to label those emotions and how to deal with them in a different way. And that's why peace builders have been so impactful in this work. It's important that we as adults explore, I think I've said this a few times, but we need to find out what these kids are about. What do they like? What inspires them? What do they fear? And learn from them as much as we can. Be explorers of them, because traumatized kids want to feel safe, and they don't want to know what you know until they know that you care about them. And so we can help them recognize their own survival coping. You know, I mentioned that chart where the kids are choosing bad ways to cope with them, negative behaviors to cope. We need to replace those with new things and new coping mechanisms, and tell them that, you know, there's danger in the way that they're doing things. And when we make them feel safe, they're able to trust us more. And we can replace these strategies, these negative behaviors, with other coping strategies. Think about the kids that you have in your program or that you work with, and when their negativity starts to come up or their behaviors start to come up, see what they like and then replace it. Try to figure out which one of these things could work, you know, whether it's, you know, dancing, or whether it's art or exercise or reading a book. All of these mechanisms could be really instrumental in helping kids calm their emotions, bring their body back down to a neutral base so that they can begin to get rid of those chemicals that are flooding their system and create that fight or flight response, so that they can actually focus on something more than just survival. And so when they are self-aware, when they know what their triggers are, they know what's going to set them off, they can focus and they can have these positive strategies, then there are less injuries, and they can have a more positive life. And that's what we really want. We just want kids that have experienced trauma in their early childhood to create, You take those negative situations, those negative coping strategies, turn them into something that is a better coping strategy that will help them learn, that will help them build long-term goals and plans for their future. And we can do that through after-school programming, through mentoring, through supportive networks, and by being where the kids need us at the right time. So I just wanted to end that with today with that, and just say that, you know, there's a lot of good resources through the NCTCSN, which is a juvenile treatment facility, and they do a lot of national work, and it's where we've learned how to work with our most traumatized kids. And again, thank you for the time. I think that together we can help our kids reach their fullest potential.
Those strategies. In our chat room, we've been talking a little bit about those strategies. That's great. Jacquelyn, I just have to say thank you for all the work that you're doing, guiding people, leading people, for folks who are interested. Jacquelyn was one of our guests in a previous talk show, and she shared her personal story about growing up and the challenges that she's faced and how she came to where she is today, and how she's continuing to push it forward and be a warrior of light and really changing the lives of students. So I cannot say thank you enough. If you listen to this talk show today and you're like, oh my gosh, I gotta learn more, we are so fortunate to have Jacquelyn join us at the Beyond School Hours Conference in Atlanta. She's going to be one of our panelists, our guests, I should say, up on stage, that we will be having kind of a view-like discussion. It's going to be Jacquelyn, as well as Dr. Colleen Lely, who was our last guest in our last live talk show. And we're bringing back, Jacquelyn, I think you remember Ruby Sullivan. From the Annie Casey Foundation. She has some fascinating stories and good experiences to share as well. And then we have a surprise guest that we're still working on, so I'm not allowed to say who that is, but we're working on a surprise guest that we think it's going to be really exciting. So please join us for that show, where we can learn more about the amazing work that Jacquelyn's doing, the amazing work that Dr. Lely and Ruby are doing, as well as just the amazing work that Foundations Inc. is doing across the nation as well. So thank you to everybody. Thank you, Jacquelyn. Thank you to our chat room, was really active today. Thank you for everybody who chatted it up with us. And I turn the time back over to our hostess, Elizabeth.
Well, thanks, guys. This was really an amazing conversation today. I just want to thank our fabulous host, Shawn Petty, and our amazing guest, Jacquelyn Santiago, for joining us. We want to thank the Charles Stewart Mott Foundation for sponsoring this virtual edition of our Perspectives from the Field talk show. If you are interested in continuing this conversation about trauma-informed practice, we hope you will join us at the Beyond School Hours Conference, which is February 20th through the 23rd in Atlanta. There's a link at the bottom left-hand corner of your screen that you can click to register. There's also a feedback survey that we would love for you to fill out about our webinar today. Again, thank you so much for joining us. We hope we will see you on December 6th for our next virtual edition of Perspectives. And I just want everybody to have a great day. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you, everybody.